I want you to remember.
Okay, we're back. John Russo here in the box on a Tuesday night. What's the date? You took the paper away from me. What is today's date? The 14th?
Yes.
Thank you very much. You always keep taking the paper over there. I say leave it in the middle. But in any event, our good buddy Jerry Palm, CBSSports.com. Jerry, football again is in the air. I know it's not college football time yet, but exciting stuff. But all of a sudden, for the second year in a row, the rug gets jerked out from underneath the LSU Tigers down there. What's going on with this Mayu kid?
Well, the Honey Badger got himself kicked off the team. It's just a shame. He probably had the rumor, and I can't substantiate this, is that he failed another drug test, which would make sense with the length of suspension and all that. But so he's going to transfer probably down a level so that he can play right away. But it's it's a blow because he does a lot for that team. I mean, he's a weapon as a defensive back, and he's a bigger weapon maybe on special teams as a returner. He's a game changer back there, and that means that LSU is going to have to find a replacement. But it's a very talented team, so it might just be that they just go to the next guy, and the next guy is good too. The guy before Matthew was Patrick Patterson. And, they thought, well, you guys should lose Patrick Patterson. Well, they didn't miss a beat. So we'll see what LSU does. He's obviously an important guy to what they do, but he's not everything. So I don't think this means that LSU is not going to win a national championship or something like that. They still can.
It's interesting how teams, universities gain an identity for producing a certain, position player. The LSU has been churning out defensive backs, and for years USC running backs and things like that. I wonder any sense for how that really is. I guess obviously it's just recruiting.
Yeah, that's part of it, and that's kind of the tradition of your school and what you do. My school is Purdue, and we're considered a cradle of quarterbacks. And there's been a lot of great ones over the last 50 years from Purdue, and lately actually turning out defensive ends almost every year to the NFL. So it seems like everybody's got, a position of great players. I always thought it was kind of funny. Michigan seems to churn out wide receivers, even in the Bo Schembechler days when, they were a 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense. They had all these great wide receivers. And, it's just one of those things. But I think, it's tradition helps to keep things like that going.
Yeah, and at that time, a lot more scholarships, and they had room just to, and people wanted to go to Michigan. It's a different world now. It really has. I'm going to say evolved, not devolved, but I think college football overall, except for all the off the field stuff, is a better place when there is more parity now than there was, say, 20 years ago.
I think it's certainly more interesting, don't you?
I do.
Although, I wonder truly how much parity there is. I think there is more, but, as you and I have talked about, a 16-team playoff, I wonder if we wouldn't have a lot of the same teams in that playoff year in and year out.
We probably would. I would say 3/4 of them for sure. But 20 years ago, Appalachian State doesn't go to the Big House and win under any circumstances.
That is for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. The third string 20 years ago under Schembechler would have beaten Appalachian State under any circumstances. Not that I like to give him any airtime because the guy just irks me to no end. But Lane Kiffin found room in his mouth for another foot this past week since we talked last. Any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry. What did he say? I missed it.
Oh, did you really? Yeah. Well, he was asked. I'm struggling for notes here. He was asked about his the USA Today college coaches poll, which of course is a joke.
And this is his first year getting a vote.
Go to team number one.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I thought it was something more recent than that.
Yeah.
And it turns out he did.
Yeah, we haven't talked in a week, but
and he's since relinquished his voting status. He said his one and only time voting at the USA Today
what?
poll.
It's the coaches poll. Who cares?
Right.
It really is by definition, but people care. I mean, it's on the front page.
You know what though? It wouldn't have been. I mean, it would have been news if he didn't lie about his vote.
Right.
I mean, he's lying about his vote.
Right.
Well, I guess the thing is with this guy, and keep in mind I'm a Raiders fan. He's just footloose and fancy free with the truth. Everyone laughed at Al Davis when he got up there and had a press conference to detail why he was letting him go with malice or whatever the term is. In other words, not wanting to pay him the balance of his contract. But he was saying this guy's a liar, and it was really the sum of what he was saying. And it turned out he wasn't as old and crazy, at least in terms of Lane Kiffin, as everyone accused.
Such an obvious liar that even Al Davis in his old and crazy days figured it out.
Yeah, I mean,
and it didn't take his psychic to do it.
And well, the thing is, again, for us here in Tampa Bay area, we've got his dad, who's an exemplary human being, and
of course,
and he never got a whiff of an NFL head coaching job, and this guy's had 2 or 3 of them already, both big time college and pro, and he still hasn't hit puberty yet. I mean, I don't get it. I wish, he's one of those guys, and I wish I could take credit for this statement, but it's funny and I use it often. He was born on third base and swears, and swears to hit a triple.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, right, exactly.
He just,
I love that figure of speech, by the way.
And I don't even know where I heard it, but I love it. I think it's hilarious, and it certainly fits him. Something else that is hilarious that we'll take a few moments here and preview the Big Least, as I guess it's going to be called this year. I've actually got your work here in front of me, Jerry.
Are we doing over under on wins again?
What is the over under total on any of them? But in any event, yeah, sure.
I think Louisville could win a bunch because the schedule works for them. And
because they
somebody's got to win the games in that league.
Yeah, I was going to say somebody has to win.
It really is amazing, and again, it was not even 2 years ago that we thought that the Big 12 was going to be like this or even worse and simply dissolved, just gone away. And they found their way to be back in power, which makes me feel good. I wouldn't have liked if that happened. I hated when I saw what
Big East, by the way, named a new commissioner today, which was an interesting hire. They hired an executive from CBS. A programming executive from CBS, which is a good thing for them because I think the Big East, more than any of these other leagues, is going to be really dependent on TV money, and has always been really dependent on TV relationship. And so to hire a guy out of a network like CBS makes a lot of sense for them, but it's a unique move. Nobody's ever done anything like this before.
Yeah, that is unique. I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
This happened today.
Tell me I know it's 2 years before the playoff kicks in, but is the Big East still have an automatic BCS bid in our final 3 minutes together here?
They do for the last 2 years. Yes, they do.
That's insane. I mean, that
Well, I mean, it's that's the old deal. That's the way it was structured.
Well, no, I understand it's in writing, and that's that. I guess you couldn't have foreseen this happening, this mass exodus. But I mean, there had been other things happen like this before with the ACC and things. But man, I tell you what, that's.
Once these conferences get exalted, do you think that these teams are going to end? All of them are going to end up into a big conference? I mean, I don't.
No, I've heard talk, about, people like to talk about 4 16-team super conferences, and I think you and I have talked about this before, John.
We have.
I am a firm believer that that's a bunch of hooey, never going to happen. The Big Ten, for example, is at 12, and I cannot think of 4 schools that are a good fit for the Big Ten.
Right.
I can think of maybe 1. I can't think of 4.
Notre Dame.
And the Big Ten does not expand for the sake of expanding. So if the Big Ten's not going to 16, you're not going to 4 with 16.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, we were just talking about the parity in college football now, and I mean, I'm seeing conference parity here. In the Big East, like you said, somebody has to win the games, but. I mean, maybe overall, me being biased, maybe overall in college football, just because now the SEC has more teams in it. But I don't know, conference-wise, if there's as much parity between the conferences as there used to be.
Well, the SEC's on a high at the moment. These things tend to be cyclical. SEC fans seem to think that they were born good and have remained good forever. But you go back to that 2004 season where Auburn went undefeated and didn't get into the title game. The reason they didn't was because the league was down that year.
Right.
So, that might be the last time the league was down. But, every league has its up and down cycles. And the SEC is on a strong up cycle at the moment, and they're going to ride it as long as they can. But, don't be surprised if one of these years, maybe sooner rather than later, the SEC hits a couple of down years. It's just the nature of college sports is there's so much turnover in coaches, in players especially. Every school deals with turnover in players, and it's just hard for everybody to be hot all the time.
Right.
Well, and I tell you what, it's very top heavy, the SEC. I mean, based on last year. I mean, once you get past LSU, Alabama, and I guess we'll still say Arkansas.
Right.
I mean, Georgia.
Well, South Carolina, I think is going to be pretty good. I think Georgia has a chance to be pretty competitive. But you're right. I think, you're looking at a pretty top-heavy league. I think it might be a little less top-heavy this year than it was last year. I think it'll be a little more balanced once you get past LSU and Alabama, but still, pretty top-heavy.
Well, I mean, that was all what I was basing on was last year. But in any event, we got 2 minutes, and I want to get a couple of these in. Interesting, you seem pretty sure that Louisville would win the Big East. They do have the highest win total, 9 over/under. But if you take them to win, you get more than 2 to 1 on your money. You get plus 220. Is there any team
really?
that you think could jump up and overtake them to win the Big East?
I think if they stay healthy, no. I like Louisville to win the Big East if they stay healthy.
Yeah,
if they don't, obviously you'll lose a key player or two. I mean, a Louisville can't lose a Tyrann Mathieu or a guy that important to them, like LSU can because they don't have the depth. But I think if they stay healthy, I like Louisville to do. I would probably take the over on 9 wins, and I like them to win the league.
Yeah. Well, one thing's for sure: if they get the over 9 wins, they win this league.
Right.
That much is for certain. But and plus 220. That seems like a very odd line, and this is a current line too. And it's weird because they've got a field line. We got to give up 3 to 1 to take the rest of the teams. And why would you do that?
Right.
The plus 220 means nothing to me.
Yeah, well, it means you get 2.5 times your money. But in any event, just a couple of them here because we're almost out of time. Cincinnati over/under 7.
I'll say, I like them right on 7, so I'd pass on that one.
Okay, well, we can do that. Rutgers at 7.5.
I would go, I think, under 7.5, but not very under. I mean, I expect Rutgers to be, bowl eligible, but I don't. I'm not thinking, I don't think it's an 8-win team.
Our USF Bulls at 7.
I like them over. I think that South Florida is in for a good year. I think maybe the second best team in that league.
Yeah, that was my thought. The one team that could jump up and maybe beat Louisville for the title, that'd be the team I'd be worried.
I think they play each other at Louisville, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't have actually the schedule in front of me.
Right.
And one more before I let you go here. UConn, the Huskies at 5.5.
Under, because I don't think they make a bowl.
Well, it's funny. I'm reading your story here. Got to fill the bowls, and and we're not talking cereal here. It's amazing that they're going to struggle this year with all that's gone on to fill 70 eligible teams.
It's going to be hard this year. It's definitely going to. We're going to be counting. That'll be the big story of the last 3 weeks of the season. Is obviously you'll have the national championship matchup is always a big story, but beyond that, are we going to get enough eligible teams, even with the measures the NCAA has taken to try and make that happen?
Well, it's funny because they know what's happening because they're already making these rule changes.
There's been a possibility, for a few years now. Once we went to 35 bowls a few years ago, this became a distinct possibility. It's been tight every year, but this year you've got so many ineligible teams, and already 4 that could possibly be bowl eligible, certainly good enough to be bowl eligible. And you've got 2 more in Miami and Oregon that have active investigations going that could conclude at any time.
Interesting stuff. The rules are always written in pencil with the NC2A, that's for sure. Jerry Palm, we appreciate you so much being a part of the show every week on Tuesday night. Your spot, CBSSports.com. If you like what you hear here, go look up Jerry Palm on CBSSports.com and take a look at his work. We'll talk to you next week, buddy.
All right, take care.
Okay. All right, guys, we're running a little bit late. We want to get off and on the air here, so we get the coach, Warren Bell.